Hello and welcome to the Chapter 3 and 4 lecture slides. Today we will be covering the chapters in your book, which are covering Chapter 3 first, which deals with humor and comedy, and then a more specific look at conflict and drama in Chapter 4. Just a few notes before we begin. This is meant to supplement and help explain some of the readings, not to be a replacement for them, so you will get a broad overview of the concepts that are covered in Zillman and Vorderer's book, which you are supposed to read. Also, this video goes in order, so if you would like to view the Chapter 3 slides first and then look at Chapter 4, that's more than okay. There is a break where you will see the difference. Maybe it can help you moving forward. If you want to watch it all at once, also fantastic. So without any further ado, let's begin with Chapter 3, which deals with comedy and drama. The title of the chapter is actually Humor and Comedy, but because this deals primarily with Dolph Zillman's disposition theory of drama and comedy, drama is going to be a factor in this chapter. Overall, the disposition theory of drama and comedy explains how audiences will enjoy or approve of or not enjoy or disapprove of narrative entertainment and the characters that are in it. So essentially what Zillman is looking to do is explain the circumstances and process of how we like a character and why we like and empathize with them, why we cheer for them, what outcomes we like for them, what outcomes we don't like for them. Zillman states that we identify good and bad characters by observing their actions. So essentially, there's this really iconic quote that I have on screen here that says the audiences are constant moral monitors. This means that when we watch a drama, comedy, whatever it is, we're looking at the characters and their intentions and their actions in order to make determinations whether we're supposed to like or dislike them. In sum, Zillman says that characters that we like, aka protagonists, are those that we approve of their actions or their intentions. We want these characters to succeed. Generally speaking, these are characters that value the safety of others and care for them, value fairness and uphold the law, are respectful, are happy generally. By contrast, the characters that we are supposed to dislike are those that we disagree with their actions, that they in some way go against our expectations of what a good person is. These would be your antagonists, your villains, people that conflict against like characters. Generally speaking, we like when liked characters, protagonists succeed or are rewarded in the plot. So if we see somebody that we really enjoy, like Superman, for instance, is a really great example of somebody who is supposed to just be 100% enjoyed because they do so much good. We want to see Superman win in the end. We want to see him overcome his foes and get the girl because, well, he's been a good person, and that's what we expect from people who are a good person that we agree with. By contrast, we like when dislike characters fail and are punished. So Lex Luthor, a villain who is dastardly and generally selfish, we don't want to see him succeed. We want to see Superman overcome him and for him not to get his goals. So, to kind of hammer this home, what I'd like you to do is view the following short clip from Spider-Man in 2002, and we'll explain afterwards maybe how you came to the determination that you're supposed to like or dislike certain characters, or and maybe what you would have liked or disliked from a scene overall.
Spider-Man! This is why only fools are heroes. Because you never know when some lunatic will come along with a sadistic choice. Let die the woman you love, or suffer the little children.
right, so I'd like to kind of go over a few things of what you just saw before we get into the disposition theory of comedy. Go back to this slide for a second. 1. Think about how you determine the right from the wrong characters here. Spider-Man was somebody who ended up helping somebody, was caring for both parties, and was interested in them. That's probably something that you would enjoy, and Zillman would argue that this would hint that is somebody that you should like, that's a protagonist. By contrast, the Green Goblin, who was Willem Dafoe in the scene, was putting these people at risk, and he would say that we would disapprove of this, and this would make him the antagonist. Now, I also explicitly picked this clip because it has two instances. One where Spider-Man succeeds when he saves both Mary Jane and the kids, which probably made you feel good. You wanted to see Spider-Man succeed in his goals because they are looking after other people. However, he also gets punched into a large building, and that probably wasn't the best for you at the time because it shows the Green Goblin being rewarded and Spider-Man actually being punished, despite the fact that they have contradictory views of what you would like or dislike. Green Goblin is dastardly and mean and puts others at risk. Spider-Man tries to save those people, but we see him get hit, and that probably isn't something that we enjoyed too much. This kind of breaks down the disposition theory of drama. However, there are a few differences as it relates to comedy that Zillman points out make comedy somewhat different in terms of disposition. Overall, what he notes the most is that audiences are in a comedic mindset. They want to laugh. They're willing to give up some of the empathy and strict adherence to some of their disposition, who they like and who they don't like, and who they want to see succeed and who they don't want to see succeed, in order to have a good time generally. So, overall, when good characters succeed, just as Spider-Man did, we don't laugh at it. So what is funny? Sometimes something can be funny when a character disparages a disliked or more well-off character at another's expense. So maybe Spider-Man is wisecracking jokes at the disliked Green Goblin in the previous scene, or maybe the Green Goblin is painted as somebody who is very rich and has an extravagant life. We might like to see them get put back in their place. As I said earlier, the audience is willing to suspend some of their empathy or willingness to feel similarly to characters in order to laugh. So say that they actually like Spider-Man, there might be certain instances where they don't mind laughing at him, just to have a nice little joke and see him put back in his place, although Zillman notes that this can't go too far. Zillman also points out two different kinds of humor that occur frequently. Tendentious humor, which is where there's a joke where there's a victim or a target, so like a traditional joke, or a disparaging remark, something that would make fun of somebody else. These can also be vulgar, racist, or sexist jokes that you would see on your late night comedy shows on Comedy Central, but also non-tendentious humor, which is non-hostile, absurd humor. It might be puns or wordplay that are just supposed to get a giggle without a specific target. Zillman also describes different instances that that dispositions lead audience to gain mirth, which is just amusement, in different ways. Specifically, Zillman says that when an audience likes a character and they tell a joke at somebody else's expense, or when a disliked character is the victim of a joke, the audience finds this funny. By contrast, the audience will not laugh if they see a disliked character make a joke at somebody else's expense, because we don't want people that we don't like having the laughs. And also, we won't like when a liked character is the victim of a joke, so we wouldn't want to see people making fun of Spider-Man. However, I would like to note that Zillman does say there are certain instances where people are willing to spend some of their empathy in order to laugh, and are willing to laugh when a liked character is a victim of their joke, just to put them in their place from time to time. That about wraps up Chapter 3 in your book, so we move on now to a more finite look at drama and suspense in narrative. Specifically, drama is dealing with narratives that feature plots, and the author of this chapter, Cynthia Knobloch, who is a Zillman student, actually notes that plots is a very broad term for a temporal or time-ordered sequence of events that contains different events, discrete scenes that have causes and effect. These events are generally marked by conflict, where two or more characters are in opposition and there needs to be a resolution. As noted by Zillman in disposition theory, Certain of these characters will be liked and others will be disliked based on the way that they act. Knobloch notes specifically that liking and cheering for certain characters to overcome conflict in these events can come via identification with characters, which resembles the kind of people, that's when we see a character on screen or in a book or in a game and we actually admire them or like them for some way, or via empathy, where we understand a character's plight and might in some way get connected to them. It's noted in the chapter here that this can occur for both like characters and dislike characters. However, they are one way that audiences get invested in conflict. And generally speaking, conflict is somewhat unsettling. We want to see resolution for conflict because it causes negative arousal for audiences, which moves us into mystery and suspense, which are two different forms of drama specifically that really encourage audiences to have fear, to have high arousal, negative states that they want to see resolved, but they do it in different ways. Mystery plots are those which feature drama, but information from the beginning of the narrative is withheld from the audience, so it forces them to think, what happened? How did this happen? They're in a constant state of curiosity about the plot, and that is where drama is derived from, this conflict of not knowing how things happened and wanting to see that resolution and wanting to see like characters, those who we identify with and empathize with, overcome. By contrast, suspense is a drama narrative in which the audience is certain about a bad outcome for a liked character. So, a lot of different cues within the narrative, the plot, cinematography, music, sound, etc. will lead the audience to believe that something bad will inevitably happen. And they will think, oh no, this bad thing is going to happen. So the feeling of suspense then is driven by audiences' anticipation for what is bound to happen and their empathy for the characters that they don't want to see it happen to. This causes a highly arousing state which is unsettling for audiences. Look at this scene. I would like to note that it's from Jaws, and there will be different ways that the scene, through foreshadowing, through cinematography, and through music, will lead you to believe that something bad will happen, and especially to more people than just one of the groups that something bad happens to. So watch through the scene and think about that previous slide, which said that suspense is caused by creating a situation where people think the inevitable will happen to liked characters.
Hey, Marty, I know you got a lot of problems downtown, but I've got a couple of problems at the house I wish you could take care of.
One, I've got some cats parking in front of the house. I can't get down to the office, and that garbage truck next to the office has got to be moved.
So what I need is a red zone. It's a simple thing you can take care of. You've done it before.
Would you come here a minute, please?
Do it.
Are you okay?
Everything's fine. Yeah, fine.
Listen, if the kids go in the water, it's worrying you.
No.
They can play out here on the beach.
It's all right. Let them go.
It's cold. We know all about you, Chief. You don't go in the water at all, do you?
It's some bad hat, Harry.
Chief Brody, you are uptight. Yes. Come on. That's it.
Pippet! Come on, Pippet! Pippet!
Everybody? It'll be okay now.
Alex!
So, note how different the music, the over-the-shoulder scene, the fact that the main character was constantly scared might have led you to believe that something bad would happen. And of course, bad does actually happen in the end. So why do we want this sort of bad thing to happen? Well, the argument is made that 4 major mechanisms might be underlying this need for suspense, because I'm guessing there are many of you out in the audience right now among my students who actually really love horror and suspense movies. The first explanation is that of catharsis, which essentially states that the bad feelings that we experience during a suspense narrative allow us, the audience, to experience negative emotions in a safe place. So rather than feeling these bad things in the real world, in public, and crying and feeling scared, in a narrative, a book, a TV show, etc., these places are more safe and acceptable places to experience suspense, and thus we seek out these experiences so that we can experience negative emotions and not experience them in our day-to-day lives. Another explanation is that of escapism. So essentially we want to distract from our boring, sad existence of our real world with something exciting, even if it is not necessarily the most desirable, emotional, and arousing state. So it really unsettles us, but it's something that's different from our boring day-to-day monotonous life. The fourth explanation comes from Zillman's excitation transfer theory, which essentially states that the resolution of conflict is intense and exciting, and especially so in suspense, where everything centers around creating these unsettling feelings that are highly arousing for audiences. So the more distressful the narrative is, the more exciting the resolution is. If we're feeling really, really, really wound up by a suspense narrative, when it's finally resolved, and we see like characters get away unscathed or win the day and overcome the conflicts in the movie, we might note that these are really, really pleasant feelings because of the jag from those negative states that are super intense to the good feeling of the resolution. So that arousal might be desirable, especially for a bored audience, when essentially creates a very positive state when it is resolved at the end of the plot or at the end of a scene. Finally, one of the theories that was noted near the end of the chapter was social comparison. So some argue that suspense is essentially something that we desire and that we want to seek out simply because we want to watch people on screen go through bad situations, and it makes us feel better about ourselves. So when we see those children unfortunately being terrorized, we think to ourselves, at least that's not us, and that's the appeal of going and seeing these different narratives. So I believe this is the end. Yes, here are some references of the book, theories, and the movies that were used. What I'd like you to do now is, 1, if you haven't already, take quiz 2, which deals with chapter 3 and the additional reading about comedy and drama, and then also engage in some of the posts in the discussion board. They specifically deal with trying to explain the appeal of suspense and of horror, and explain some of the best horror movies of all time in chapter 4, but also ask you about certain situations where maybe the disposition theory of comedy or of drama might not exist. So things like absurdist humor that we see on Adult Swim, or even morally ambiguous narratives like that of Mad Men and Walter White in Breaking Bad, where we don't necessarily know who to cheer for and who not to. So I would like you to kind of think about these things, maybe consider some of the which theories and which perspectives do you actually ascribe to concerning the appeal of horror? What's your favorite horror movie? Why? Try to think about these things. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I will see you next time.